Hi everyone, this is Sonickrazy. I decided I had to make this video because I just want you guys to see that I'm sincere in what I'm about to tell you. And I believe in God now because there are a bunch of events in my life that have happened that I just can't explain any other way. Um, Before I get into that though, I just want to say, I want to clear a few things up first. Number one, when I wrote that blog post, you guys were right. I was having a mental breakdown because I had just gone off of alcohol for 4 days straight, and before that, I had been drinking alcohol for like a year heavily. So it was like I was having the shakes. I was just like completely like just desperate for something, and I just kind of like all the while I was being like almost tormented by like thoughts of like what I'd done in the past, like what if what I'd done in the past really like would please God. And I just thought back to like Akagi or Washizu says, if you can die with a smile, then you can transcend God, like stuff like that. And plus like the whole element of like just Akagi being the hero and he's called a demon all the time, and like Washizu going from this like madman evil guy to like like all the gods are supporting him and stuff. It just like I thought back to all that stuff, and I was like looking at some of like the manga that I had lying around. Plus, like I mentioned in the blog post, I explained a couple of the things that I had translated to my dad before he died. And when I did, like I was just kind of listening through all the stuff that I had translated, and like I got to Kazuya Hen, and I just still remember the look on his face when I told him about the helmets. It's like, is this my son? Like, I just want you to understand, like, it kind of felt like maybe that's what's at the root of all of it. Now that I'm like, if I'm being honest with myself, maybe the fact that my dad, like, he couldn't even talk while he was in the hospital. He couldn't say anything. But I could just tell from his face and the way he was squirming that, like, as I was telling him about Kazuya Han and the helmets and freaking Akagi and the blood draining machine and like all this stuff, like he didn't know about any of that until I told him, and it just made me feel really bad. Like I started regretting everything, and my dad wasn't religious. He was never religious. But I had a nanny growing up who was religious. She always talked about Christianity, and she would always tell me about these like events in her life that couldn't be explained any other way, such as like the time that her mother just got healed overnight because she accepted Christ. Like literally, she was like insane. Like she was just stark raving mad for 10 years, and then like she freaking accepted Christ, and overnight she got healed miraculously. Like her cancer went away. Like I know what you're thinking. I was an atheist for 10 years, so I know exactly like the kinds of things that like you can use to deny that. Like you can say, oh well, she was lying, or oh well, maybe she just like she just freaking the chemicals in her brain, like I don't even know, like the chemicals in her brain, like freaking like just the fact that she thought she was saved, like whatever, so on. I don't believe any of that now. I doubted it for a long time, but I'm gonna tell you some stuff that that has happened in my life that changed my perspective. But before I do, where was I? I told you about yeah, I had a mental breakdown. I've been off of alcohol for 4 days straight. Um, and I was just at the end of my rope. That's really what it was. I was just at the end of my rope, and I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn to. So I just thought back to all the works that I've done, and I thought, is it really pleasing to God for me to be doing the stuff that I'm doing? And at the time, I was like, it can't be, because it incorporates demons so heavily into the very narrative of all of his works. Like freaking like everybody's a demon, like compared to one, practically. And like, except like Kaiji, I guess. And I mean, a couple of other people, but I mean, like Kaiji's like the one hero, and maybe Kaiji is kind of like a Christ-like figure almost. So I don't know. I am starting to regret like my decision, and I might come back someday, but I need some time to think about it. And I apologize for writing what I did in that blog post, because I just wrote it in a state of desperation. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn to. I'm not I became a Christian like 4 months ago, and I'm not sure what the right thing to do is right now. Like, it was a really tough spot, and like I made a rash decision, and now I'm thinking back on it, and I'm not sure if I made the right decision. And like, at any rate, I need a break. And oh yeah, like, I'm sorry about it became a huge deal in the comments, so I have to mention it, the homosexuality bit. Like I mentioned, like, I think I might be gay too, and I just was having a hard time like wrapping my head around it. And like, I thought, like, for me, it's kind of like, am I or am I not? It's like, am I fooling myself into thinking that I can be attracted to women just because there's attractive women out there? Or and like, I have to say this because I made that statement, okay? Like, I have to let you know where, like, I wouldn't be coming out like this if like, for any other reason. But I have to tell you, like, I feel like I mostly like guys. But there's a part of me that is like, am I just fooling myself, It's like when I read the Bible and its passages about like homosexuality is an abomination, it's like, then am I really just fooling myself with my feelings, And it's like, I'm the kind of person that doubts everything. I doubted, like, I mean, obviously I doubted religion for a long time, and now I'm coming around to it. But it's like, where I'm at right now is like, there's passages in the Bible about it, but like, Jesus never said it was wrong, for one thing. God said it was wrong to the Israelites, but he also mentioned stuff like mixing fabrics. And like, it seems to me like, when he said that, he was like trying to protect the people from like diseases and stuff, because they didn't have any form of like protection or birth control like we do nowadays. And as a matter of fact, I didn't either in Paul's time, and he also mentioned that. But you have to consider, like, Jesus was the Son of God, right? And he never said anything. Paul was a prophet who met Jesus, and he had the Holy Spirit imbued in him. I know this sounds crazy to you non-believers, and believe me, it sounded crazy to me for a while too. But just stay with me, okay? I'll get to my point. But I have to clarify this first of all. Anyway, like, it seems like it's mentioned infrequently enough in the Bible. Like, where I'm at right now is, if you're an upright, righteous, moral person in every other area, or at least most of your areas, and you happen to like people of the same gender, then I don't think God's gonna judge you that bad for it. Like, and another thing is, like, this is gonna sound weird, and like crazy to people who don't believe, but God has sent me dreams about a lot of stuff recently that I need to get rid of in my life, and I've systematically eliminated every single one of those, but there hasn't been a single time that he's sent me a message or a sign about my sexuality. And it's just kind of like something, as a matter of fact, there was this one dream that seemed to like say like, we're born again, so it's okay. Like, I don't, like, whatever. But yeah, anyway, like, in my case, it was just that I wanted to please God, and so I was willing to sacrifice my sexuality for that, and that's why I put it in the blog post. And I know it seems like really crazy and homophobic and like all that stuff, but you have to understand that it was just, I was in a really bad mental state at the time, and I was just questioning everything. And as a matter of fact, like, quitting translating, I'm not sure if that's was the right thing to do. It just like I'd cut out a bunch of other stuff in my life, like weed was one thing. Like every time like I smoked weed, I would have like these weird thoughts, and I just was like, I have to cut that out, and like I was cutting out this and that and this and that, and eventually it came down to translation, and I'm like, do I have to sacrifice this too? And do I have to sacrifice my sexuality too? And I was just in a state of desperation, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Like, if you wanted God, I'm going to do it. And, I mean, maybe it was a mistake, but at the very least, the fact that I was willing to do it, I think, will show God that I'm really loyal to him. So, now, I'm sure all of you are freaking at this point being like, so you believe in God? Why the fuck would you believe in God? Okay, so let me tell you. All right. So I kind of grew up with mixed messages in my life. Like, my mom and my dad were both atheists, but I did have a nanny that I mentioned before who was always telling me, like, she was a staunch believer in Christianity, and she was always telling me about, the wonder of God, like the miracles that he's done in her life and the lives of other people that she's encountered. I didn't really know what to believe. I kind of had a little bit of both, but after I reached a certain age and I had access to the internet, I started like watching like YouTube videos on like atheism and stuff like that, and the arguments that they had were really compelling. Like, for example, that religion has been used to control people, and like, I don't deny that. Like, it has been used to control people a lot throughout human history, and I kind of thought that that's all there was to it for a long time. I thought that it was just made up, and like there was no legitimacy to it, and that it was literally all it was just to like control people and make them act the way that you wanted them to act. And there are religions out there like that, and I think there's no better example than Catholicism, which was founded like 3 centuries after Jesus Christ lived and died. And they just basically took advantage of the faith that the people had, which, like, they couldn't suppress. Like, they tried to suppress Christianity in Rome for so long, but eventually it just became so overwhelming that they had to accept it, and then they, like, turned it into their own doctrine and made money off of it. And that's where Christianity gets its bad rap, in my opinion. And it wasn't until Martin Luther came around in the 16th century that he finally looked at it and was like, we are not practicing anything that was in the Bible. Like, this has become an entire corporate, like, just control scheme. So that's how the message of Jesus got distorted over the years. And there's a lot of people who are like, Jesus didn't exist and all that stuff. But if, like, his resurrection was proven when, like, a bunch of people, like, saw the empty tomb. And he came back to life and he talked to Paul. Like, Paul was originally Saul, as you know, and like Saul like was persecuting Christians. He was like, yeah, stop believing in this guy. He's not good. And then Christ came back from the dead and talked to him and told him like the teachings that he needed to change. And Paul like completely changed his opinion after that encounter, as he should, because he saw the living Jesus after he had died, And the same goes for all of the disciples. They also saw the living Jesus after he had died. And that's why they went on to teach his message. And there's a lot of documentation from other sources, a lot of non-believing sources that also verified his existence. But anyway, back to the story. Like, I watched a bunch of atheist videos. It's funny how I transitioned into a Christian argument after talking about atheist, because that's just how my mind works now, you know? I just, like, can't think like an atheist anymore because I know and I feel and I believe that there's a higher power out there. But anyway, getting back to my story, I felt that, like, after I became an atheist, I just started to gravitate towards, like, dark things. Like, I started to like dark things more and more. Like, it just seemed to me like I was just, like, you know, getting pulled in, almost. And I don't know if any of you feel the same way, but it's just kind of like, once you drift apart from God, you kind of, like, gravitate towards ungodly things. Kind of feels like to me. And I could kind of feel the difference between how I used to be when I sort of believed in God and how I became when I didn't. You know, it just kind of seemed like there was a gap there, and also that there was something I'd lost, that I was losing something. Like, I remember that I tried to accept Christ. And if you don't know, like, in Christian theology, born again Christian theology, when you become a Christian, you cannot be a true Christian unless you're born again. That's just what I believe. And as a matter of fact, it's written in the Bible. That is what it says in the Bible in black and white and red. You cannot be a true believer unless you are born again. If you are not born again, then God does not have a relationship with you. I tried to accept Jesus into my heart and become a born again Christian when I was like 7 or something, but I think that's just too early. Now I believe that in order to become a true born again Christian, you have to accept Christ like when you're old enough to rationally understand what it is, you know? You can't accept it too young or else you're just going to fall away from it like most people do. But regardless, I accepted Jesus into my heart when I was like 7 or something. And as I like got more into atheism, I felt like I was losing him. Like, I literally felt like there was a gap in my heart that was like filling with nothingness, if that is a good way to put it. Like, just there was something missing, you know, and I kind of always felt it, and I just, you know, I just denied it, and I was just like, oh, that's just the way I feel, you know, and it's not true or anything. But then, when my dad died, that all changed. And my dad died from heart surgery when he was 77. And he died because he just never got any better. He was, like, suffering in the hospital for 7 months. And I went in to see him once a week, and I'm regretting not seeing him more. But in the end, he passed away from a stomach infection, and after it happened, I was just devastated, and I loved him dearly. And I mean, like, if you've ever lost a loved one, I'm sure you know how it feels, and I just couldn't believe how he was really gone. That I really lost him. And, I mean, it sounds like I gave into Christianity out of desperation. And, I mean, that's not altogether wrong. I do believe that God has been guiding me my whole life, and I do believe in a higher power. I do believe that, like, I actually was able to accept Christ in my heart, and I did it again. And by I did it again, I mean, I think I re-established the connection with Jesus, or more specific, like when I say Jesus, when you say accepting Jesus into your heart, what you really mean is you're accepting the presence of the Holy Spirit. Like, you say Jesus because, of course, we all believe in Jesus as Christians, but what Jesus taught was that you have to accept the Holy Spirit into your heart to be born again. So it's not technically true, but I mean, whatever. The point is that I did do it again. And this is the part of the story that gets a little freaky, because the way that I did it is an experience that I'll never forget as long as I live. So it happened when I was watching some videos online in my house, and I'd been thinking for a while, like, could God really be real? Like, sure, there's stuff in the Bible that you might not agree with on a moral level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that God doesn't exist. And I was watching these videos about how the evolution of primates to humans cannot be explained. Like, we have fossil records of different kind of Neanderthals, but there's no common thread that links them all together. And so as I was watching these videos, I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna try it and see what happens. And here's where it gets scary, because I didn't do it the right way. I didn't do it the right way at all. So there I was watching these videos, and half believing, half not, just kind of like, all right, I'll try it, you know. I just kind of motioned towards myself, and I said, welcome. And as soon as I did that, I felt this immense presence in my heart. I felt like it was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. It just resonated through my entire body, and it was powerful. It was extraordinary, but it wasn't like a good feeling. It was like something had taken hold of me, and I didn't know what it was. I thought, like, is this God? Is this how God is supposed to be? But I just ran into the other room. I started, like, just kind of, like, getting in a fetal position. I just started, like, freaking out, just screaming, just, like, I started throwing up. I was crying. I was, like, just, what do I do? And so I called up my nanny, my old nanny, the one who taught me about Christianity, and I told her what had happened, and I told her what I said, and she said, that's not right. God should never scare you that bad. So after that happened, I just ran screaming out of the house, and I freaking just started shouting prayers, just saying, Jesus Christ, you are my Lord and Savior. You are the only one I want in my heart. No other forces have control over me. I just started, praying and praying, saying these things, and, like, she was helping me through it. And, like, it scared me so bad. Like, I can't even express the just immense presence that I felt in my entire body. And so what I started to think had happened is that when I said welcome, I welcomed in not only God, but all the demons that had been infesting my room. Because I'd had a hunch for a while that there might have been dark forces living in my entire house, just because I'd gotten into, like, some weird stuff, and my dad had a girlfriend that still lived with him who was also into a lot of dark stuff, and, like, brought a lot of things that when I was younger and I, like, believed in Christianity, I would look at them and I would get this sense of, like, something is not right. And my nanny would tell me, like, that demons have the power to, like, live on things. So in any case, I feel like there might have been dark forces living in my house, And I feel like when I said that, I welcomed them in at the same time that I was trying to welcome the Lord in. And I just cannot put into words how it felt. But anyway, I decided that I couldn't stay in that room any longer. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to get out of the entire house. So I rented a motel room for the night, and I spent the entire night just reading the Bible, just praying and praying and praying. Please don't let any dark forces have any dominion over me. Please, Jesus, please just let me be free, and I will devote myself to you. And so the next day I met up with my old nanny at a coffee shop, still kind of traumatized from it, as you can imagine. And I brought my Bible and I was flipping through it, and she gave me Psalm 91 that says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart." On and on it goes. But as I was reading this, I felt the presence of the Lord start to dwell in me, and I felt like He was talking to me, like that He was speaking specifically to me. And then after I started reading through that and I finished it, I was talking with my nanny about some of the events in my childhood, and as I was talking about this, I swear to God, it felt like my body was staying in place, but my spirit, my soul was being lifted up above my body. And as this was happening, I was just it just felt so relieving, so overjoying. And then, the weirdest part, after we finished talking in the coffee shop, as I was driving home, it felt like my mind was moving faster than time. It felt like I was thinking 3 steps ahead of everything I was doing as I was driving home. And it maintained as I went into my house, and I was I was trying to exorcise my room of demons, and by rubbing oil on the above the doorway, and just grabbing stuff that I thought was demonic and throwing it out. But whatever. As I was doing all this, it felt like my mind was moving faster than time. And as this was happening, I was like, this is weird, but it would be really useful for mahjong. I was like, you know what? If I could get this Lord's presence while I'm playing mahjong, I could freaking, I don't even know what I could do. It would be amazing. It would be amazing if I could do that. Because if I could think 3 steps ahead as I'm playing, I mean, it kind of felt like the Lord was trying to speak to me, and He was showing me some of the power that I can have if I am loyal to Him. That's really what it felt like to me. And ever since then, I've just been staying devoted. I've had my slip-ups. I've obviously I had that incident where I quit Sonickrazy, and I wrote this big old blog post, which I don't know, I'm second guessing myself on that one. I don't know what God wants me to do in that area, but in any event, I just feel like God spoke to me. God showed me, this is where you were. You were in this place that was wrong. And it almost felt like He was kind of angry at me that I welcomed Him in such a callous way, such a just saying one word, normally you're supposed to say Lord, I accept you into my heart, or so on, or whatever you want to say. But it kind of felt like He was mad at me And like that's why he allowed me to feel the fear that I did, to show me where I wasn't right. And now I just feel he's a part of my life, and I know he'll look after me, he'll guide me, he'll protect me from anything like that ever befalling me again. And as a matter of fact, after all that happened, I swear, like, demons started tormenting me in my sleep. Like, I would go to sleep, and then, like, I would have a very vivid nightmare. Like, a very vivid nightmare about something, like, that was, like, that had stood out to me previously. And, like, after, like, I woke up from the nightmare, there were times where I would, like, feel, like, a presence, like, under me. Like, I would roll over, and I, like, would feel something under me. And, like, it would, like, just, like, to fly away. And I was like, what was that? And there was another night, I swear to God, I woke up and I felt demon hands on my throat. And I was just sitting there like, you can't touch me. I'm a sheep. I'm the Lord's child. I'm a child of God. You have no dominion over me. God will protect me. And so, I mean, like, you can dismiss all of this if you want. I don't care. All I know is that it was very real to me, and my entire perspective on life has changed. To me, there is no doubt that there is a Lord, that there is a God, and I'm not sure if he's the only God. That's where I differ from a lot of creationists and Christians. I say creationists, but I don't necessarily believe that the world is like 6,000 years old. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of archaeological evidence that doesn't support that. Like, there are structures that are like 10,000 years old, and it's like, who built those? You know, it's funny to wonder about. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, maybe all the world religions are right, and I'm just destined to follow Yahweh, you know? Could be that. I don't discount, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't have to know. All I know is that there's a God and he's looking after me. That's all I care about. Like, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I don't agree with killing people over your religion, but I mean, as long as you don't do that, like, go ahead. Like, I don't care. All I know is that I'm a child of God. I'm a child of Yahweh. And he will guide me through my life as long as I have faith in him. And that's unmistakable to me now. Like, there's been other signs throughout my life. Like, I pay attention to license plates, and this is something that only God could speak to me through. Like, literally. Okay, this is another story. I wasn't going to tell this, but this actually ties in pretty well. Okay, before all this happened, mind you, I was working at Subway, and I was still an atheist at the time. I didn't believe in demons or gods or anything like that. So I was talking with my coworker about, like, why Christians thought Pokemon was demonic, and he said, well, some of the Pokemon are named after demons, aren't they? And I was like, really? Let's go check. I was like, let me pull up a list of demons on my phone and read out their names. And, like, as I was doing this, like, being like, oh, that sounds like this Pokemon. I don't even want to name it because I don't want to say it again. But, like, I was reading through this list of demons, and, like, as I was reading through this, like, my coworker says to me, like, you should stop. Like, you're gonna summon something here. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, none of that's real. But then, 2 minutes later, I look over at the cameras, and there's a guy standing there, and I didn't hear him come in. I literally didn't even hear him come in. And normally I do hear, like, I have, like, really perceptive hearing for, like, sounds. Like, not so much for people talking, but for sounds. But anyway, And so I walk up there, and standing there is a guy with no nose and a hole in his throat. And I'm just kind of like, can I help you, sir? And he's like, can I have a free sandwich? Just like expecting it from me. Like, just like I want a free sandwich. Gimme. And I was just like, sorry, can't do that for you. We don't really do that. And he like walks off to the bathroom. I'm just kind of like, okay, that was weird. And I'm just kind of getting a little freaked out. Like, I don't totally believe it. I'm just kind of like getting a little freaked out. And like, he comes back over and I'm like, I mean, guy with no nose, that sounds like he's had a pretty rough life. Here, I'll just make you a sandwich, okay? Let me just make you a sandwich. And so like I'm asking him all about what he wants, and he's like, oh yeah, thank you. I'll have, this and that and this, that. And like, someone else walks up, and I remember it was a woman and her child, and so she asks him like, oh, were you in the army or something? Like, how did that happen to you? And he totally was just like, yeah, just kind of like there was something he was hiding or something. And I told this story to Dex McKinnery, Tats, I'm on the Discord, and he said it might have been because, like, he was doing drugs or something, like he was like snorting through his nose. But my contention to that is, if you're the type of person to do drugs so much that it costs you your nose, are you not the same kind of person to be infested by demons? Is that not why he was summoned when I was listing out these names? So, he goes away, and then I'm just kind of like, all right, that was weird. I'm not going to think anything of it, though. 2 hours later, this couple walks in. Like, I hear the doorbell. I look at them, and they're just like, oh, thank Jesus, it's warm in here. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And I just kind of scoff at them, because I'm still an atheist at the time. They walk up, they order a salad. I'm like, all right, I'll make this for you. I'm not going to engage in too much conversation. Another guy comes in, stands right behind them. They go down, they eat their meals. And, like, as I'm helping this other guy, one of them walks up and asks the guy that I'm helping, do you know Jesus? And she says it in a way that's kind of like she's looking not at him. She's like looking in the space between him and me. She's like kind of like directing it like as an open question, And I just kind of scoff at her. And then I look out the window and I see their car. And their car has the license plate 962 something something something. And I'd been like paying it, like, because I just like numbers and stuff. And do you remember the day that, I mean, this is a spoiler, but you should know it if you read Fukumoto. Do you know the day that Akagi Shigeru passed away? September 26th. And 926, those numbers are in reverse order. They're like in descending order. So it's almost like I know this sounds arbitrary. It sounds like, oh, it could be any numbers, but I picked up on it right away. Like, I saw those numbers and I had like programmed that number into my mind. Like, whenever it was like 9:26 p.m., I'd be like, oh, 9:26. I know what that means, stuff like that. Like, it was in my mind. And so when I saw the license plate, I immediately picked up on what the message was. Like, it was as if it was telling me, you are descending into the darkness. If you don't accept Jesus, you're going to be like that guy with no nose. So, I mean, those are my stories. I mean, I'm sure you can discount them. I'm sure you can say, oh, I just had a freaking hallucination, like right after I decided to freaking accept Jesus into my heart, or whatever freaking, I was an atheist for a long time. I've considered those options, but I don't believe them. I feel like this is all, like you would have to explain it with a long series of coincidences if you're going to explain it in a non-godly way. So I believed in them. Feel free to like believe whatever you want about them. Feel free to like discredit me. I don't care. I'm just telling you why I believe. And that's that. And that's it. All right, so that's my story. That's my video. You can believe it or not. I don't really care, but there's one final question I have for you. What is more likely? That the New Testament is made up of lies that would not benefit the government at the time whatsoever. Like literally the government of the time tried to kill every living Christian, everybody that believed in Jesus Christ, and people went to the grave in order to defend their beliefs because they held them so strongly. What's more likely? That they believed in lies? They all believed in lies and were willing to die for a bunch of lies from God knows where? Or they were real? Or that they actually witnessed the resurrected Christ? And even if Christ wasn't real, are his teachings not the correct way to live your life? If you follow Christ's teachings all the way through, will you not make the world a better place for not only the rest of the world by sacrificing yourself, by like living a righteous life for, I mean, just doing everything that Christ did to the best of your ability. But also, like, when you forgive people, when you just, like Jesus preached, just, like, when, like, you turn the other cheek, right? Just, like, when somebody wrongs you, don't dwell on it. Like, if you live your life by those principles, will you not make the world a better place at the same time that you make your own mind a more healthy and happy and less cluttered place? Like, even if you don't believe that Christ was real, is it wrong to follow his teachings? As far as just practicing the teachings in the Bible, like in the New Testament, and just like following them in your own life, what's the harm in that? What could you possibly object to for someone who does that? That's all I have to say. So if you want to call me crazy, go ahead. But when you do, spell it with a K. Sonickrazy signing out.